My name is Leo. I'm 34, and for the last few months I've been a ghost keeper. It's not what my job title says, of course. On paper, I'm a general contractor, part of a skeleton crew hired to breathe life back into a dead place. The money was good, better than good, the kind of money that makes you ignore the weird feeling in your gut. I needed it. My truck was on its last legs, and my daughter had her heart set on a college I couldn't afford, so I signed the papers. The job was the Jubilee Gardens renovation. You probably don't remember it. It was a theme park that flourished for a few years in the late 70s and then shut down faster than a ride derailment. The official story was bankruptcy, bad investments, mismanagement, the kind of boring stuff that kills fun things. It sat there for decades, a fenced-off monument to forgotten joy, slowly being eaten by rust and poison ivy. Our crew was small. There was me, handling the structural assessments. There was Ricky, a kid barely out of his teens, all boundless energy and dumb optimism, here to do grunt work and prove himself. There were a couple of electricians, quiet guys who mostly kept to themselves. And then there was Marcus. Marcus was the foreman. He had to be pushing 70, with skin like tanned leather and eyes that seemed to hold the patent on tired. He was on the original construction crew that built the park, and later he was on the crew that shut it down. The company that hired us said his experience was invaluable. That was an understatement. The first day felt like stepping into a photograph, a faded, water-damaged photograph. The colors were all washed out, sun-bleached pastels of what must have once been screamingly bright. The giant, grinning face of Giggles the Clown over the main gate was peeling, one eye socket empty, giving him a listless, tragic look. Everything was silent, except for the wind whistling through the skeletal frame of the Star Streaker roller coaster and the crunch of our boots on broken asphalt. It was eerie, sure, but not scary. It was melancholy. You could almost hear the echoes of laughter, the phantom smell of popcorn and cotton candy. Ricky was running around like a kid in a candy store, tapping on the hollow fiberglass shells of the swan boats, making whooshing sounds as he pretended to ride the defunct rocket racer. I felt a little of it too, a weird, nostalgic sadness for a place I'd never known. Marcus just stood there, hands in his pockets, chewing on an unlit cigar and looking at it all with a profound lack of enthusiasm. "Lot of work," I said, clapping my hands together. He just grunted, "More than you know." That was the first sign, I guess. The first hint that this wasn't just a job. It was something else. But the paychecks were clearing, and my daughter was already picking out dorm room colors online. So I ignored it. You learn to ignore a lot when you need the work. The first couple of weeks were normal. Demolition, power washing decades of grime off of once cheerful facades, running new wiring. It was hard, satisfying work. We'd pack up at dusk, tired and covered in filth, and the place would return to its silent vigil. But then the little things started, the strange things, the things that led to the rules. Rule 1, always count your tools. It started small, so small you'd think you were going crazy. I'd set my hammer down on a bench, turn around to grab a measuring tape, turn back, and the hammer would be gone. I'd spend 10 minutes searching, cursing myself for being careless, only to find it sitting on a completely different bench 50 feet away. At first, I blamed Ricky. He was young, a bit of a prankster. I cornered him by the half-drained canal for the river adventure ride. "All right, kid," I said. "Funny is funny, but we're on a clock. Stop moving my stuff." He looked genuinely confused, hurt even. "I haven't touched your stuff, Leo, I swear." He held up his hands. "My own screwdriver set went missing yesterday. It wasn't just us. The electricians complained about a whole spool of copper wire vanishing from a locked van. We all got together, a little morning meeting by the defaced statue of the park's founder. We were suspicious of each other. Tempers were starting to fray. The easy camaraderie of the first 2 weeks was curdling." Marcus listened to it all, sipping his coffee from a battered thermos. He didn't say a word until everyone had run out of steam. Then he cleared his throat. "Nobody is stealing from you." We all looked at him. "The park takes a tax," he said, like he was explaining that water is wet. "It's always been this way. It gets bored. It likes new things." We stared. The lead electrician, a guy named Dave, scoffed. "What are you talking about, Marcus? Things don't just walk off." "Here, they do," Marcus said, his gaze sweeping over the silent rides. "You leave a tool out, it might stay, it might not. If it's something shiny, something new, it's more likely to go. Don't get attached. Just budget for the loss." He looked right at me. "And at the end of the day, you make sure every single toolbox is locked and accounted for. You do a count, every day, no exceptions." It sounded insane, the ramblings of an old man who'd spent too much time in the sun. But the thefts were real. So, we started doing it. Every evening before we left, we'd do a full inventory. It was tedious, it felt stupid, but the major thefts stopped. Little things still went missing: a dropped screw, a single work glove, a stray nail. It was like leaving a tip on a table, a small price to pay, a tax. Rule 2: the mascots stay in storage. Part of the renovation involved cataloging the park's assets. That meant going into the places that had been sealed the longest. The worst of these was the Mascot wardrobe building. The air in there was thick and smelled of mildew, mothballs, and something vaguely sweet like decaying sugar. Racks of colorful employee uniforms stood like rows of silent, headless ushers. But the real nightmare was in the back. Lined up on shelves, slumped in corners, were the mascot costumes. There was Barnaby Bear, the park's main character, a big, friendly-looking brown bear in a blue vest. His foam head sat on a shelf above his limp body, the painted, on smile somehow more sinister for being detached. There was Princess Aurelia, her golden yarn hair matted and her silk dress rotting. And there was Giggles the clown, his rainbow suit stained with water spots that looked disturbingly like old blood, his oversized head grinning a rictus grin with chipped red paint. They were just foam and fabric and wire mesh, but standing in that room it was hard to believe it. They felt heavy. They felt like they were watching us. Ricky, of course, broke the tension. He grabbed Barnaby Bear's head and put it on, doing a little dance. "Howdy, folks. Welcome to Jubilee Gardens. Hope you don't have nightmares." I laughed, but it was a nervous sound. "Take it off, kid. That thing's probably full of dead spiders." Our job was to move them to a more secure, climate-controlled storage unit near the main gate. It was an all-day job, hauling these limp, surprisingly heavy bodies out into the sunlight. They looked ridiculous, pathetic even, slumped in the back of our utility cart, just a pile of old costumes. We packed them away, locked the door, and I felt a palpable sense of relief. The next morning, the door to the storage unit was wide open. Not broken into, just open. The padlock was sitting, unlocked, on the ground next to it. My heart hammered in my chest. I thought about the tool inventory. I thought about a whole crew's worth of equipment being stolen. I peered inside. Everything was there, except for one thing. The Barnaby Bear costume, which we had laid carefully on a tarp, was now standing up. It was propped against the far wall, arms out at its sides, as if surprised. His head was back on his body. We all stood there. The silence was absolute. Ricky finally broke it, his voice a little shaky. "Okay, funny joke, guys. Who did it?" No one answered. We all looked at Marcus. He was just staring at the bear, his face grim. "This is what happens when you play with them," he said, his voice low. "I told the new owners. They don't listen. They never listen." He walked into the unit, grabbed the bear costume like it was a disobedient child, and wrestled it back down onto the tarp. He put the head on a separate shelf. "From now on," he declared, his voice hard as iron, "this unit stays locked, 2 locks, and nobody goes in here alone, ever. They don't like to be moved. You leave them be." We didn't need to be told twice. We put a second heavy-duty chain and padlock on that door, but every morning when I came in, the first thing I did was look at that storage unit. I'd let out a breath I didn't know I was holding when I saw the chains were still in place. But I started noticing things. A piece of blue fluff from Barnaby's vest snagged on a rose bush halfway across the park. A single, oversized white glove, the kind Giggles the clown wore, sitting on the edge of the fountain in the main plaza. They weren't staying in storage. Not really. Rule 3. Ignore the animatronics. If the costumes were creepy, the animatronics were a whole different level of wrong. They were the park's aristocracy, the automated skeletons over which the magic was stretched. Most of them were in the Giggles Fun House and the Enchanted Forest ride. We had to get them operational again, which meant dealing with their guts. Wires, pneumatics, hydraulic lines. The electricians, Dave and his partner, handled most of it. They'd power them down at the main breaker every night. Standard safety procedure. You don't want a few 100 pounds of steel and fiberglass suddenly lurching to life while you're working on it. The first incident was in the fun house. It was a dark ride, full of unsettling clown figures that were supposed to pop out and laugh. The main one was a giant Giggles animatronic that sat on a throne at the end. Dave came to find me, his face pale. "You gotta see this." He led me into the funhouse. The power was off, so we were using flashlights. The beams cut through the dusty air, making the other clowns cast long, dancing shadows. He pointed his light at the throne. The Giggles animatronic was supposed to be facing forward, head slightly bowed in its powered-down state. Its head was now turned a full 90 degrees to the side, staring directly at the ride's entrance, directly at us. Its plastic, painted eyes seemed to catch the light of our flashlights in a way that felt entirely too aware. "The hydraulics are dead," Dave whispered. "There's no pressure. It shouldn't be able to move an inch. We left it facing forward last night. I guarantee it." We checked the security cameras. The company had installed a few basic ones to monitor our work and prevent trespassing. We rewound the footage from the night before. The first few hours showed nothing, just the dark, silent fun house. Then, around 3 in the morning, it happened. There was no movement on the screen, no flicker of motion. But in one frame, the animatronic was facing forward. In the very next frame, its head was turned, like a visual glitch in reality, a continuity error in the fabric of the world. "It's the old wiring," I said, trying to convince myself as much as Dave. "Residual charge, a pneumatic leak." "No," Dave said, shaking his head. "No, man, that's not how it works." Marcus, when we told him, just nodded slowly. "They're waking up," he said. "All this noise, all this attention, it's like ringing a dinner bell." His rule was simple. When you find one of them has moved, you don't talk about it, you don't point at it, you don't acknowledge it, you just reset it. You put it back how it was, and you get on with your work. The more attention you give them, the more they'll do. It was a test of will. We'd walk into the enchanted forest and find the robotic deer had turned to face the wall. Or the fairy animatronic, meant to be waving a wand, would have its hand lowered, pointing at the ground. Each time, a cold dread would wash over me. I'd see Ricky's eyes go wide, see the color drain from Dave's face. But we'd follow the rule. Silently, one of us would climb up, physically wrench the animatronic back into its proper position, and we'd pretend nothing had happened. We stopped talking about it. We stopped looking at the security footage at all. It was easier not to know. But pretending didn't make it stop. It just made the silence louder. Rule 4. You don't work after dark. This rule came directly from Marcus on day 1. It was absolute. The sun goes down, our tools go down. He'd said, we're out of that gate before the last light is gone. No overtime. No, just one more thing. We leave, every single time. For the first month, it was easy to follow. We were tired, and nobody wanted to stay late. But we started falling behind schedule. The company was sending emails. Pressure was mounting. That's when Ricky started pushing it. We could get so much more done if we stayed just an hour or two later, he'd argue during our lunch break. We've got the generators, we can run lights. No, Marcus would say, his voice leaving no room for debate. Why not? Ricky pressed one afternoon. What's the big deal? You scared of the dark, old man? It was the wrong thing to say. Marcus stopped what he was doing and walked over to Ricky, his shadow falling over the kid. He wasn't angry, he was something far scarier. He was solemn. Let me tell you about 1982, Marcus said, and the rest of us stopped working to listen. The park was still open then. I was on the maintenance crew. Night shift. There was this kid, name of Paul, young, like you, cocky, like you. He was supposed to be greasing the tracks on the Star Streaker. Simple job. Marcus paused, looking up at the hulking, silent coaster. His supervisor told him to be done by midnight. The park closed at 10, but the maintenance lights stayed on till 12. At midnight, they went out on a timer. Paul figured he could get it done faster if he ignored some of the safety protocols. He was still up there when the lights went out. They found his harness the next morning. Marcus said, his voice barely a whisper, clipped to the safety line on the top of the main hill. They found one of his boots on the ground below. That was it. No Paul. He leaned in closer to Ricky. They reviewed the security tapes. Back then it was black and white, real grainy. You could see his flashlight beam up on the tracks, moving around. Then, at midnight, the main lights cut out. His little beam keeps moving for another minute, and then you see other lights start to turn on. Little pinpricks of light all over the park, the eyes. The eyes on the animatronics, the eyes on the Mascot posters, the little bulbs on the game stalls. They all started to glow, just faintly, and they weren't white, they were red. And on that tape, you could see them all turning, slowly, to look up at that roller coaster. At Paul's little flashlight beam, the beam started jerking around like he was panicking. Then it went out. Marcus straightened up. When the sun came up, the red lights were gone. So was Paul. So you tell me, kid, you still want to work after dark? Ricky didn't say another word about it for a while. The cautionary tale. The pressure from corporate kept building. We fell further behind. Ricky was getting frustrated. He was a good kid, but he wanted to impress people. He He wanted to be the hero who got the project back on track. He started small, staying 5 minutes late to clean up, 10 minutes late to organize tools for the next day. Marcus would yell at him, but Ricky would just shrug it off. "The sun's not even all the way down, old man. I'm fine." The unspoken tension in the group was thick enough to choke on. We were all on edge. The park felt hungrier. The moved objects were more blatant. One morning we found a whole fleet of swan boats dragged out of the canal and arranged in a circle in the main plaza. We spent half the day just getting them back in the water, all of us silent, the rule of not acknowledging it stretching to its absolute limit. Then came the day it all broke. We were trying to finish the primary wiring in the main street buildings. It was a huge job, and we were failing. An email came down from the head office that was basically a threat. Get it done by the end of the week, or there would be consequences. Ricky took it personally. "That's it," he announced at lunch. "I'm finishing it tonight. I don't care what Marcus says. I can stay, run the generator, and get this whole section done. We'll be heroes tomorrow." "Don't be an idiot," I said, a knot of pure ice forming in my stomach. "You heard what Marcus said. It's a ghost story, Leo." Ricky scoffed, though his eyes darted nervously toward the funhouse. "He's just trying to scare us. It's 2023. There are no monsters." That afternoon, he was defiant. As we started packing up at dusk, he was unloading a portable generator from his truck. Marcus confronted him. They yelled. It was the first time I'd seen Marcus truly lose his temper. He wasn't solemn anymore. He was terrified. He grabbed Ricky's arm. "You do this, you're not just getting fired," Marcus roared. "You're getting eaten." Ricky wrenched his arm away. "I'm tired of being scared of shadows," he yelled back. He was trying to be brave, but I could see the tremor in his hands. To prove his point, he did something stupid, something unforgivable. He walked over to where the Barnaby bear costume had been seen propped up a week before, even though it was now back in storage. He kicked at the empty air. "See, nothing here, just a stupid, dirty park," he shouted at the silent buildings. His voice echoed, thin and small. That was it. Marcus just shook his head, a look of profound defeat on his face. He turned to me and Dave. "Pack up, we're leaving." "We can't just leave him," I pleaded. "He made his choice," Marcus said, his voice hollow. "The park heard him. He's marked now. There's nothing we can do." It felt like a betrayal. It felt wrong, but a deeper, more primal instinct screamed at me to listen to Marcus. We packed our things in silence and drove out the gate. I looked back. I could see Ricky, a lonely figure in the growing twilight, yanking the cord on the generator. It sputtered to life, and a string of work lights flickered on, casting a pathetic little bubble of safety around him. It was the last time I ever saw him. We showed up the next morning with dread heavy in our stomachs. Ricky's truck was still there. The generator was out of gas, silent. The string of lights was dark. He was gone. We searched everywhere. We called his name until our throats were raw. There was no sign of a struggle, no blood, nothing. His phone and wallet were on the front seat of his truck. We found his hard hat. It was sitting in the Giggles fun house, directly at the feet of the giant Giggles animatronic on the throne. The animatronic was powered down, of course. But this time, it wasn't just its head that had moved. Its arm, the one that was supposed to be resting on the arm of the throne, was now extended. Its 3 thick fiberglass fingers were curled slightly, almost gently, around the top of Ricky's yellow hard hat. We didn't need to see the security footage. We didn't need any more proof. We ran. The climax. I called the police. I told them our co-worker was missing. They came, did a sweep, asked questions. They treated us like we were either suspects or idiots. He probably just walked off, the lead detective said, bored, got tired of the job. We knew better. The company immediately suspended the project. They were sending a corporate security team to secure the site and conduct an internal investigation. They told us to meet them at the park the next day to give our formal statements. Marcus knew it was a trap. We can't go back there, he said to me over the phone that night. His voice was strained. Especially not at night. They're active now. They've had a taste. But we had to. It was part of the contract. So the next evening, me, Marcus, and Dave found ourselves waiting by the front gate as the sun began to dip below the horizon. The corporate suits were late. "This is a bad idea," Dave muttered, rubbing his arms. The air was getting cold. The wind picked up, and with it came a sound, faint, tinny, and utterly unmistakable. The calliope music from the carousel. It was broken. We'd all seen the rusted gears, the rotted-out motor, but it was playing. A cheerful, jaunty tune that was the most terrifying sound I had ever heard. "We need to go," I said, my voice tight. "Now." As I turned toward my truck, the main park lights flickered on, all of them. The whole park blazed to life in a riot of color and light. The Giggles sign grinned down at us. The star streaker was lit up like a Christmas tree. And then, just as suddenly, they all went out, plunging us into a darkness deeper than before. The only light was the moon. A loud clang echoed from the gate behind us. It had swung shut. The heavy iron bolt had slammed home. We were locked in. That's when we realized the corporate security team was never coming. The company hadn't just suspended the project. They had cut their losses. They'd locked us in with their mistake. Panic set in. Pure animal panic. Dave started screaming, rattling the gate. I was frozen, my mind just blank with terror. Only Marcus seemed to keep his head. "The office," he yelled, grabbing my arm and yanking me into motion. "The main security office. It's the only solid building here." We ran. We didn't look at the dark shapes of the rides, didn't listen to the carousel music that was now getting louder, more distorted, notes bending and souring. We just ran, our footsteps echoing in the terrifying silence between the musical phrases. From the corner of my eye, I saw movement. In the Mascot wardrobe storage unit, the one with 2 locks, the door was hanging open. The building itself was dark, a black square against the night sky, but silhouetted in the doorway, I saw a shape. A familiar shape, big, bulky, with rounded ears. Barnaby Bear. It wasn't a costume. It wasn't propped up. It was standing there, its head slightly cocked, watching us run. We crashed into the security office, slammed the reinforced door, and threw the heavy deadbolts. We were panting, sweating, hearts trying to beat their way out of our chests. The office had thick windows overlooking the main plaza. We were trapped in a fishbowl. "What is this place?" I finally gasped, looking at Marcus. He sank into a chair, his old body finally giving in to the exhaustion. "It's not a park," he said, his voice ragged. "It's a trap, a cage, always has been." He told us everything. The park was built on a place that was wrong. The founder thought the joy and laughter of children would cleanse it. Instead, the entities that were already there just adapted. They learned. They put on the new faces provided for them. Barnaby, Giggles, Aurelia. They weren't mascots. They were masks. "They feed on emotion," Marcus explained, his eyes distant. "Strong emotion. Joy worked for a while, but what they really love, what really makes them strong, is fear. The shutdown in the 80s wasn't about bankruptcy. It was because the mascots started getting too real. Children were talking about how Barnaby Bear whispered to them from the shadows, how Princess Aurelia promised to take them to her real castle. One child vanished from the park, just like Paul, just like Ricky. "We didn't just shut it down," Marcus said. "We performed a ritual. We starved it, boarded it up, cut it off from all attention, all emotion. We put it to sleep. I came back for this job to make sure it stayed asleep. But this new company, all this noise, all this work, our presence here, our fear, we woke it up." We rang the dinner bell, and Ricky was the appetizer. A loud bang on the door made all three of us jump. Then a scratching sound. Long, slow drags of something sharp against the metal. Another bang, this time on the window. We looked over. Pressed against the glass, grinning its impossible painted grin, was the face of Giggles the clown, not the animatronic, the costume. Its dead black mesh eyes stared in at us. It raised a hand, a puffy white glove, and tapped gently on the glass. Tap, tap, tap. We spent the rest of the night in abject terror. They toyed with us. The lights would flicker on and off. The carousel music would stop and start. We'd hear footsteps on the roof. See shapes moving just at the edge of our vision. They were feeding, gorging themselves on our fear. We weren't just renovating a park, we were charging a battery. We survived until dawn. As the first gray light touched the sky, the noises stopped. The presence receded. The park grew silent again. It felt sated. The gate was unlocked. Epilogue. The official report lists Ricky as a missing person, presumed runaway. The project was cancelled due to unforeseen structural instabilities and insurmountable budget overruns. The Jubilee Gardens was condemned. They didn't just board it up this time. They brought in a demolition crew and leveled the entire place. Then they built a concrete wall around the perimeter. Nothing gets in, nothing gets out. I took the money they paid me for my silence, and I moved my family 3 states away. I have a normal job now. I build decks for suburbanites. I go home, and I kiss my wife and daughter. I try not to think about the faded colors and the peeling paint. But some nights, I can still hear the calliope music. Marcus retired. I see him for coffee sometimes. We don't talk about what happened. We don't have to. We just sit there, 2 men who have seen the things that wear the cheerful masks. The company gave me the full security footage archive for my records. I think it was a threat, a reminder to keep my mouth shut. I watched the final tape once, just once. It was from a camera on the new perimeter wall, taken the day after the demolition was complete. It shows the empty, flattened landscape, just dirt and rubble. The footage is date-stamped, running through the night. Nothing happens for hours. Then, in the pre-dawn gloom, something comes out of the woods at the edge of the property line. It's a figure, big, shambling. You can't see details. It's too far away, too grainy. But I know the shape. I know the rounded ears and the slight hunch of the shoulders. It walks slowly, deliberately, away from the dead park and disappears into the trees on the other side of the road, heading for the world. They sealed the park, they buried the evil, but they forgot to do a final head count. So if you're ever driving late at night, down some forgotten country road, and you see a friendly-looking bear in a blue vest hitchhiking on the shoulder, don't stop, just drive faster.